Hi, I'm Obsessing Again. This video focuses on the season of winter, following Ellie's solo journey, meeting David, and the destruction of Ellie's childhood. A striking image from the cut to black, a lively rabbit hopping along, then an arrow piercing for its fragile body, is the sobering realities of The Last of Us. Spiritually, the rabbit is a representation of new beginnings, and the rabbit, being a prey animal, is vulnerable, forcing it to be adaptable to its environment. The rabbit echoes Ellie and her new journey. The winter month is typically a challenging season for all people. Colder days, less daylight, and it can impede on movement. Those minutes of hunting for a deer leave so much unanswered. Where is Ellie? Is Joel still alive? All these challenges, and on Ellie's shoulders is a mammoth task. We find her hunting in the snowy lakeside resort. All of her time with Joel, learning of the outside world, understanding these survival skills, have prepared her to fend for herself. That be hunting. Her evasive movements in the snow, the poised look as the bow is shot towards a deer, is quite a transformation from the girl we meet at the start of the story. Her experiences of the world have been shadowed from what life was like beyond the quarantine zone. Her angst, confrontational side, and a willingness to fight have all been honed in with the help of Marlene, Tess, but in particular, Joel. The experience of leaving Marlene, losing Tess, Sam, and Henry have only hardened her. On her trail of stalking her prey, watching the footprints and markings of blood, we meet two men.
Who's there? Come out!
Hello? We just want to talk.
Any sudden moves and I put one right between your eyes. Ditto for buddy boy over there.
The introduction of David is a defining moment in the character arc of Ellie Williams. The first meeting he appears slimy, saying all the right things but has an aura that's undoubtedly off. His Midwestern drawl is a component that should put you at ease, but the world of The Last of Us, there is very little comfort and trust you can find in others. Ellie's bullish persona fends her off James. She's also quick to deduce who has power and a bargaining say, a skill refined when spent with Joel. But the desperation in her interaction with David gives him the upper hand. When fending off the horde of infected, he's a complimentary ally. During my series on The Last of Us, relationships and friendships are built on survival. Ellie must trust in David, as David trusted her to survive. Moments of suspense, a bow and arrow at your disposal, clickers and a blow to later, Ellie backpedals and mentally guards herself once the horde is cleared out. In hindsight, David is prying on Ellie's obvious desperation to aid Joel. What was a safe dynamic in Joel and Ellie has skewed with Ellie and David. When you learn of David hearing about a young girl and a man who slaughtered his group, it's that sinking feeling knowing Ellie is not safe, and she knows it too.
And get this, he's a crazy man traveling with a little girl. You see, everything happens for a reason.
When she discovers she's been tracked, instinctively she knows to lure the group of guys away, riding Callus, and eventually being thrown overboard. Her playstyle is distinctively different to Joel. She's smaller, more nimble, but less of a brute force. Keeping distance is key, unless it's a shiv from behind. Like the intro to the game, we embody her smaller frame. We feel vulnerable. As a player, you feel lonely. If all hell breaks loose, Joel can brutally punch, kick, or drag men out of his way. But for Ellie, stealth is key. The snowy huts and cabins give enough coverage to pick David's men off, with the ability to retreat. From every location we've experienced, vehicles, soldiers, cities, and infected. However, Colorado is quite unique. The loudness of nothing, or the muffled footsteps of patrolling men, and nothing else. The dynamic wildlife ruling over man-made buildings is not present in this chapter. As you've made your way into the large wooden cabin, David chokes you out as you aggressively fall into a deep unconscious state. When you come round and find the bodies being diced up, it only goes to reaffirm the guttural feeling of something being off with David and his friend when you first meet. We as a player have become accustomed to brutal violence, disgusting acts, but this delves into a darker, more raw survivalism than we're used to. This group is situated in a remote part, so access to food might be scarce, but it's a sight unlike anything we've seen or experienced thus far. When David brings you over a plate of food, his softly spoken tone, the vagueness of what meat they are eating, the hold he has on others, and people depending upon him, make him a respected leader. When Ellie is defiant and is clearly one-upping David, he exerts his anger.
With some human helping on the side?
No. No, I promise. It's just the deer meat.
You're a fucking animal.
It's awfully quick to judgment. Considering you and your friend killed how many men?
An inexcusable, uncomfortable preceding moment is David's predatory behaviour. His praise of Ellie and her traits is teetering on the boundary line until he places his hand around hers. It's implied that he admires Ellie beyond a platonic way. Ellie gently places her hands around his, a brief moment before she breaks his finger in a desperate play to get the keys so she can leave.
You stupid little girl.
The pressure David has to provide and lead his group is becoming harder, especially in this harsh winter season. During their interaction, he is quite transparent, more gentle than thugs we've interacted with, and yet we still feel he's a depraved man. And these extra normal times, would David have been a cannibal? Unlikely maybe, but he is desperate. The assortment of characters in this game make this a compelling story. No character is inherently evil, mustache twirling. Characters that are perceived as heroes and people labelled as villains exist in a realm of moral ambiguity. Exceptional circumstances make it difficult to truly judge a character. Yes, David has depraved feelings against Ellie, which we later see, but how much of his sanity and everyone else's has been muddied in this post-outbreak world? Joel and David have shared interests in doing whatever means are necessary for their pack, so in some ways they aren't too dissimilar. We cut to a beaten up Joel laying on a concrete floor, rounding up supplies, piecing where he is and where Ellie has gone, alerting David's men, fighting and killing, the usual acts of Joel. Joel begins to torture two of David's men. It's him at his most unhinged and protective of Ellie. His hardened shell from all his experience of the world post-outbreak make him the ultimate foe to these two guys. His adrenaline, desperation to find Ellie is fueling his badly beaten body.
I ain't telling you shit.
That's all right. I believe him.
No, wait!
It's incredibly violent, dispassionate, but equally understandable. Ellie and Joel's solo interweaving storylines makes for an anguished watch as we helplessly play along. They cut back to Ellie and David and James forcibly throw her onto the chopping board. Ellie is smart and uses her bite mark as a bargaining tool. She's presumably infected, meaning she could be at risk to all the campmates. Her escape on foot prompts a manhunt. Little resources, limited visibility make for intense gameplay. Ellie becomes trapped in an old restaurant as the building goes up in flames, as David parades around looking for his prey. His predatory behaviour is heightened by a psychotic compulsion with Ellie. Chasing around the restaurant as you're prompted to come from behind and shiv, a cat and mouse game. In all moments of gameplay, cutscenes, I think this next extract is equally the most emotional and disturbing. After stalking his prey, Ellie helplessly shuffles on the carpeted floor. The building becomes engulfed in flames. A small part of David's twisted psyche is admiration for Ellie's defiance, and yet all of her might and determination makes her the ultimate prey in David's eyes. He places himself on top of his prized pet, shouting at Ellie as she desperately clamours to find the machete, unleashing a lethal blow. Her childlike nature perished, and immensely rageful and scared, she violently slashes at him over and over. The engulfed building, her seething eyes, and the splashes of David's blood upon her face is the moment where Ellie fundamentally changes. These experiences forced her to grow up in a way which can only lead to her saddled with trauma. unlike Joel has ever known. Joel enters, cradling Ellie from the scene as her adrenaline is still keeping her violently zoned in. As he cradles her, like he would have cradled Sarah, Ellie is brought back into the room, and she says,
He tried to...
Oh, baby girl. It's okay. It's okay.
Joel.
This chapter in the game highlights the two ends of what humans will do for and against others. Ellie and Joel will fight the world for each other's protection, and men like David will fall into the pits of hell to fulfill his dark desires. The season of winter aged Ellie and showed her she can fight and defend, but in doing so, deprived her of her childlike nature and burdened her with undeniable trauma. Thank you for letting me obsess again.